Bham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Bhadram Pashyema Akshabhiryajatraha Sthir Om Bhadram Karnebhiः Shrunuyama Devaः Bhadram Pashyema Akshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangaistustuvagumsastanubhiः Vyashema Devahitanyadayuः Swasti na Indro Vridhashravah Swasti nः Pusha Vishwavedah Swasti nastarksho Arishtanemiः Swasti no Brihaspatirdadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvisha Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So let's proceed forward. If you recall, we had made certain mention of, I think, 7 or 8 goals for this course. And I'd like to remind you that 2 of those goals, I'd like to remind about 2 of those goals. So one of them is, if you recall, that within this course, you should get an understanding of what this Advaita Vedanta Sampradaya is. How do you define it? What does it mean? How is that different from what others talk about? And if you were to summarize it, kind of what would be called a elevator pitch. Just give me, supposing you were meeting somebody for a while and they are not going to be there for a while and they say, tell me about what that is. What are the main 7, 8, 10, 12 points that you will make? That should be, you don't have to look it up. It should be right in the front of your mind. So that would be one of the things you should be cognizant of, and I'll point that out as we go along. The other objective that I wanted to remind you of is that apart from just studying the Upanishad and even the verses of the Karika, the reason I thought about this being as a complete course is this. In the process of understanding the commentary by Gaudapadacharya ji, and furthermore the commentary of a Mahapurusha like Swami Akhandananda, it should give you an idea of the entire Shastra, not just the Karika. So you should be able to see references to the other Upanishads, Brahma Sutra, etc., that are part of the explanation of the Karika. You should be able to see that. And my request, my recommendation for you would be, again, make a separate list of references whenever they occur. Bhagavad Gita, Kathopanishad, etc., etc. And you can just make a note of that. And then if it's possible, look those up for further study. Just go to the Upanishad and try to get some depth about what the reference is. In doing so, I think your understanding of the main Karika itself will be better. Understanding of yourself will be better. Anyway, so those are the 2 reminders I wanted to do. One is to understand the lakshana, the peculiarity of Advaita Vedanta Sampradaya, And the other one is be careful about, not careful, but be cognizant of cross references between this teaching and its referencing Shruti Vakyas. What are the Shruti Vakyas? Why is it being referenced? How is that being relevant? Those are the two things that I think can be good for you to keep in mind. Okay, so let's go on. So here it's very interesting. This Chatushpad given in the second verse, right? Sarvam hi etat brahma ayamatma brahma saha ayamatma chatushpat. So this chatushpatatvam means the fourfold nature of the Atma is counterintuitive. It's not intuitive. It's counterintuitive. Why do I say that? Because it's, first of all, what Vedanta talks about, which almost all schools of thought do. Really, this is a very good thing that we have a lot of common things amongst all the schools of thought, including Vedanta. And we will go into some of that today. And that is, it's a very peculiar nature. You have to give up things in order to obtain them. Very interesting. And this is not peculiar to Vedanta. There's something more than that which is peculiar to Vedanta, but as I will point out, almost every school of thought believes in the fact that Tyaga is an important part of growth. If you look at yoga, so all the yama, samyama, etc., all the Ashtanga yoga means you have to give it up, give it up, give it up. And then you obtain something. So before you obtain the something, you have to give up something. And in Vedanta, we will see that the thing that we have to do is to give up false identification. False identification. And so here, the Chatushpada means that there is a certain identification that I am very set on certain identification, which is the body-mind complex. I cannot get rid of that. But if you were to obtain, and of course the problem with the body-mind complex identification is that it is riddled with problems. Because of my identification, I am not able to be completely happy. I am not timeless. I'm dying. I'm getting older. All those kinds of things are peculiarities of the Abhimana with the Vishwa, with the Purusha, small Purusha. And so, in order for me to obtain, and yet I am very interested in gaining freedom, cannot get rid of that desire. So there is something peculiar here, and what is being said is that before you obtain everything, you must give up the identification with a sense of limitation. And it provides a lot of help for that. It's not easy to do, but possible to do. And depending on your preparation and your hard work and so on, not that difficult to do. It can be done. But then the main thing is that you have to give up certain things. So here, with the identification of the eventual freedom, some partial identifications also have to be given up. And so we start with Prathamapada, which is the first step. And I think we might even complete the Prathamapada today. We'll see how it progresses. We may be done with it today to go to the second step for next time. So the first step is that you enlarge your identification by giving up something which is small. You have to give up smallness. So this is the very peculiar, this is what I said is counterintuitive. You know, normally in our life, what we want is an attempt to be bigger. I want more fame. I want more money. I want more security. I want more family members. I want more friends. More. And somehow my feeling is that if I can have enough of it, then it will last me for my life. And I don't know much about next life and who knows and so on. But as far as this life is concerned, I want to be secure by surrounding myself with more of everything. And I'm told by the Shastra, this is a mistake. This is a mistake. You're not going anywhere with this approach. And in fact, what will happen is that in doing this, in this desire of moreness, getting more and more, your body it will give up, and you'll have to start another all over again. Same thing will happen, more. And so the Shastra says, listen, the obtaining of what you want can really be done by giving up, not obtaining more things. And so, this you can write it down as one of the peculiarities of Vedanta, because you already have everything. You are everything. You don't even have everything. You are everything. And you are ignorant of it. That's all. So the sense of the giving up of something is a giving up of sense of limitation, which is false. This is the peculiarity. If you want to talk to somebody and say, what is Vedanta? Then you can write it down in your own mind and be able to articulate that this is what Vedanta says, that to get more, you have to give up more, which is counterintuitive, goes against the grain of our thoughts. And the only reason that this will work is praptasya prapti. I'm already full. I just don't realize it. And where I'm making a mistake, we will show it to you step by step. But the eventual point is that is the peculiarity of Vedanta. And some more things will come that I will reinforce it, but I just thought that in the beginning I'll give you those concepts. So one of the things I think we had done last time was there was a question, right? There was a question. This is part of the Shankara Bhashya for verse number 3. Right? The question was, Katham. So the Purva Paksha. Here is not a Purva Paksha, this is more of a doubt. This is not an Akshepa. This is not a somebody who's arguing with you, but there is a doubt. And so the doubt is, Katham Ayam Atma Brahma iti आत्मनोः अस्य चतुष्पादत्वे प्रकृते द्युलोकादीनां मूर्धादि अंगत्वम् इति. Here's the question. Question is, you started by explaining the identity between Atma and Brahma. Then how is it that you are now branching out into into Angatvam and Dulokadinam Murdhadi Angatvam and Vimshati Mukhatvam? Why are you going into all that? So he says, Na Esha Dosha. This is what we did last time. I'm just starting with that. So here Adi Shankara replies, Sarvasya prapanchasya sadidaivikasya anena atmana chatushpadattvasya vivakshitatvat. So he says, that the reason we are doing this is there is a flowering of the Atma. Just like when you wake up in the morning, suddenly you have lots of things happening to you, sounds. And if the sun is up, then immediately you start seeing things and so on. And in a minute ago, you had absolutely no prapancha, no vistara of all these things happening. And you are just one Atma, sleeping. No relationships, no thoughts, no prapancha, no flowering of yourself, and all of a sudden something comes up. How does that happen? Similarly, to show that here we have to show what the prapancha is and then withdraw it. And how this to be withdrawn is to be shown. And when showing this withdrawal of the prapancha, the dissolution of the prapancha in your own mind, you'll be convinced that this Jagrat Avastha is exactly like the other avasthas where there was a prapancha. This is the real meaning of the answer. Sarvasya prapanchasya sadidaivikasya anena atmana chatushpadattvasya vivakshitatvat. Vaktumichatvat. Vivakshitatvat means that is the intended way of teaching. So he says, this is not a dosha, this is not a defect, it's not like an oops, I forgot to do that. It is exactly what we want to do. So then he makes a very interesting statement. Evam cha sati, this being the case, sarva prapancha upashame advaita siddhi. So this is the goal of this whole teaching. What is the goal of the whole teaching? Evam cha sati. So this is Sati Saptami. For those of you that have studied the Sanskritam grammar, so the seventh case is is also in the case of Vishaya or Adhisthana, and one of the options of the seventh case is this being the case. So this is called Sati Saptami. So this is the one that is used here. Evam cha sati. This being the case, sarva prapancha upashame advaita siddhi. So he says that we will show where the identity at every stage, the dissolution of any differences at every stage finally results in complete Advaita Siddhi. That there is nothing else. Atma alone flowers. The Sakshi alone becomes the various different aspects of the dream. There's only one person that does it. So this is the intended meaning. But for that, you have to look at the entire prapancha and then dissolve it. This is the meaning of it. And so we'll come back to it in a minute. But so here, to tie it to all of this, we will see that the first pada is the identification or identity between Vishwa and Virat. The second one is the identity between the dreamer, which is Taijasa and Hiranyagarbha. And the third one is between Pragya, the sleeper, and Ishvara. And why that is Ishvara, we will see that later on, as we will see. And then when you dissolve all of that, so first you go from Vishwa to Vaishvanara, being the same, and in all cases you expand your identity to the entire creation, and then show. So one interesting thing, before I complete that sentence, then show, a lot of the Vedantic methodology, prakriya of Vedanta, is to reduce many into two. Right now we are dealing with many. Different avasthas, different shows, different ways of looking at things and so on. Then we finally all dissolve that into a single one, which is called Anatma and Atma. And once you do that, instead of dissolving everything individually, you first dissolve everything into Anatma, and then you dissolve the Anatma into the Atma. Then it becomes straightforward on how to do it, which will be done as part of this teaching. So this is how the teaching progresses. And here now, to show you the connection between the Karika and the rest of the Vedantic literature, as I was mentioning. So now we see in Manusmriti, which is generally we do not study very much. The only Smriti we study is the Bhagavad Gita. But very connected, very important also is the Smriti by Manu. Manu means the very first human being that we subscribe to. So there it says the same thing. It is there in other places also. Sarva bhutastham atmanam sarva bhutani cha atmani samyat pashyan atmayaji vai swarajyam adhigacchati. So he says, Sarva Bhutasya Atmanam, Sarva Bhutani cha Atmani. So he says, the Atma, which is the self of myself, which is also seen to be the self of everybody else, and all bhutas are included in myself. So both ways, I am in them and they are in me. Then alone there is a complete identity. So this is given at various places in the Shastra, which talks about the same thing. In the Mandukya Upanishad, here the reference is very clear. 2.2.11 Brahma eva idam vishwam idam varishtam. So the end point of that being that Brahma alone is this whole world. It's not anything else than Brahman, and the Brahman is nothing but Atma. So this is where we have now seen it, and we're going to pursue this, that I have to see that this world is not different from me. Then the next one is Ishavasya Upanishad. Oh, Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 6, verse number 29. Sarva bhutastham atmanam sarva bhutani cha atmani. Same thing, exactly the same idea. And if you want to read that, then you can just see the commentary on chapter 6, verse 29, and you can go to the Shankara Bhashya and see that as well. Then Ishavasya. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani eva anupashyati sarva bhuteshu cha atmanam tato na vijgupsate. I remember this, I read this first time and I didn't quite understand this. So it's very interesting. I'll show you the English translation of that and then explain where my doubt was and how I got it, how I resolved it. So the translation is Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani eva anupashyati. The one who is able to see that all the things that you see are really your own projection. They are in you already. You're just projecting out of yourself. That is the peculiar thesis. I wouldn't say peculiar, but that is the unique thesis of Advaita Vedanta. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani eva anupashyati sarva bhuteshu cha atmanam. That I am in fact in everything else. So this we will explain that in a little bit more clarity in a little while, but I'm just giving you the connection at this point. Those Ishavasyam sarva bhuteshu cha atmanam tato na vijukupsate. Vijukupsa means grina, means intense dislike. So I remember my doubt was, how does that happen? If I'm not able to see others in me, how does that turn into vijigupsa? I don't understand that. I remember that. Until it was very clear after reading a lot of the Shastra and so on, that any sense of dislike comes in intense dislike. You can have some minor dislike, as we will see in a minute. You can have some minor dislike. But the intense dislike can only happen for things other than you. I remember Swami Dayananji giving this example. He says, once in a while, if you're talking too quickly, you can actually bite your tongue. You can bite your tongue. And he said, oh, but you do not have an intense dislike towards your teeth. You just said, be careful. You disliked it. I don't like the fact that I was able to talk so quickly and then somehow it got into my teeth were not careful enough and they bit my tongue. So you can have some minor dislike, but the intense dislike that kind of can occur if somebody crosses you, somebody says something that you don't like. That can only happen if you do not understand yastu sarvani bhutani atmani eva anupashyati sarva bhuteshu cha atmanam tato na vijukupsate. So the reason we are saying this is that if you want complete freedom, so this is where ragadvesha also comes in, that the raga-dvesha only occurs when you give reality to something which is other than you, and it stems from your impatience in not being able to reach what you want to do. And you blame it on others. You not realize that thing is really yourself alone. The feeling of hatred is not necessary because one never has hatred. So vijugupsa, that's why this strong word is used here. I remember this so well. I said, why is Ishavasya talking about such strong words? Vijigupsa means hatred, strong dislike. And so the lesson to this is that if you have a feeling of strong dislike, it is because you completely disown it. And the way to reverse that is to be much more soft about your attitude towards the others. Just like you have the soft attitude towards your own teeth cutting your tongue or hurting your tongue. So having some shades of likes and dislikes is okay. It doesn't really hurt you. But the intense dislike only comes because you don't have a sense of oneness with the outside world. And the reverse of that, not reverse, but the way to reverse that, because the concern is, which now how am I going to remove my sense of dislike? Our view is that we should really surround ourselves with friends and not really have anything that opposes me. Not possible. That is a foolish thing to do. So the best thing is to become softer about others, and slowly you will see that this disowning of the world would lessen, which will be all positive. The less disowning that occurs, the softer your approach will be. And the softer your approach is, the less disowning will be. So this push-pull finally readies you for the final one, which you need to understand. You and I need to both understand that the whole world is nothing but my own projection. That is what is going to be shown. So anyway, this is this way of explaining is not outside of the Shastra. It is all part of the Shastra. Okay, I think I want to go on and talk about a couple of other interesting things. Where is my 147? Okay. All right. So now, one question is raised, and I think that this question, let's see, because really what I've found in understanding Swami Akhandananda's, and of course Swami said Dayanandji follows the Shankara Bhashya very closely. But even in the translations of the Karika, Swami Akhandananda also tries very much to tie everything towards to Shankara Bhashya. So, very good. Excellent. It is there in Shankara Bhashya. So now look at this is a new, it's kind of like a side topic. What is the peculiarity of Vedanta? So just look at this. So here, so he says, Yastu sarvani bhutani ityadi shruti arthaha upasahritas chaicha syat. Anyway, I don't know, there's something, there's a printing mistake, so I'm not able to tell that. Anyway, leave aside that one. Now let's go to the next sentence. Anyatha hi swadeha parichinnah eva pratyakatma sankhyaadibhi iva drishta syat tatha cha sati advaitamiti shrutikitaha. Excellent. I'll read this and then I'll explain in a minute. Tatha cha sati advaitamiti shrutikitaha vivesha nasyat. Okay, so this is very nice, and this Swami Akhandananda takes this out. So he says basically, wait a second. What is the peculiarity of Vedanta? Because I see the same thing being talked about by Sankhyadi. So Sankhyadi means Vaisheshikadi, Buddhas, etc., etc. So I don't understand why you are making such a big deal, because everybody is saying it. This is the question. And so here, this kind of a doubt is useful to bring out the distinction between Advaita Vedanta and other schools of thought. So here now this is what it says. So he says, I've had a cold and it's turned into phlegm, etc. But so I'm getting better. It's not as used to be last year. So here, make a note of this. Interesting. These are the different schools of thought that is talked about. Number one, what is called Nayayika Nyaya Darshana. And the originator of this is a rishi called Gautama. The Gautama is the author of this darshana called Nayayika. Okay? And what happens is that in the case of Nayayika, by the way, in all of these schools of thought, we are not shy of getting their best ideas and vice versa. They also adopt some ideas from us. We adopt it from them. If we find something very, very nicely, we say, yeah, this makes sense. Like in the case of the Shadbhava Vikara, Asti Jayate, Vardhate, Viparinamate. So this is something that was proposed by outside of Vedanta. But we've adopted it because that makes sense. It just fits in. Similarly, here also, the ideas of Nayayika, we also adopt. What are the ideas of Nayayika? They specialize in means of knowledge. What are the ways of knowing? So, all the pramana, the pramana vishesha characterizes the Nayayika. Okay? And that's what they do. So they all have something that they are very good at. They specialize in it and they do a better job of explaining that than anybody else. And we accept it. But it's different from what our main goal is, which will come later. I'm just giving you the other schools of thought. Then the second one is Vaisheshika. It's called Vishesha Darshanam. Just like you have Nyaya Darshanam, Nayayika, it's called Nayayika. Similarly, Vishesha Darshanam is Vaisheshika. And so the author of that is the rishi called Kanada. Kanada. Their specialty is different kinds of objects and their properties. Nayayika were specialists in means of knowing, but Vaisheshikas are looking into the various ways how the various things come up in this life. And so from that standpoint, this would be what would be called science. So for example, the atomic table, discovery of new particles and their peculiarities, their gunas, are all part of the Vaisheshikas. So Vaisheshikas are the old-timer scientific people. And in the new ones that come up, they can also adopt that as part of the Vaisheshikas. So this is their Vishesha. Then comes Sankhya. And so the Sankhya, the proponent of Sankhya's system is called Kapila. Their specialty is Atma Anatma Viveka. So you might say, well, how is that different from ours? So hold that thought for a minute. But this is what the Sankhya people do. So they talk about Prakriti and Purusha and the disturbance of, and so their peculiarity is also Sattva Guna, Rajo Guna, Tamo Guna, which is peculiarity of the Prakriti, and the Atma is free from it. And so this Viveka needs to be done, all of those kinds of things. So they are parallel to us to a large extent, but not entirely. Not entirely. Okay? So that's the Sankhya system. Then you have the Purva Mimamsa, the Vaidikas, and the proponent of that is Jaimini. So all of the 99% of the Vedas is Purva Mimamsa. What is their specialty? It is Dharma Shastra. What is Dharma? What is Adharma? How does Dharma lead to Swarga? How does Adharma lead to for lower experiences? What is the nature of the Atma? How does it go from one Swarga Loka to the other? What is Karma Phala? All those kinds of things, Dharma, Adharma, this is their specialty. Jaimini. Then you have Yoga, Patanjali. Their specialty is Ekagrata of the mind. How do you do meditation? How do you do meditation? How do you do samadhi? How can you remove from sadikalpa samadhi to nirvikalpa samadhi, complete cessation of all thoughts, and just quietly sitting down at one place. Hey, this is so interesting. Just before I started the class, my wife was invited to one of our friends and neighbors, it turns out, for their father's 89th birthday. So it was at 6:30. So I told my wife and I told the hostess also that, listen, I have a class starting at 8 o'clock, but I will come for a short time, which I did. I just had some hors d'oeuvres and so on. And then I came back at 7:15. My wife is still there. She's not back yet. So in that get-together, they only had invited their own family, but we were the only outsiders. That they were kind enough to invite us. And so in that get-together, I was talking to the hostess's brother and asking how are things, etc. So he says, I just got back from Hyderabad. So we said, oh, really? What were you doing in Hyderabad? Business or personal? He says, I forgot. You forget I told you about that I go there every year for a meditation event. And I know a little bit about it. He reminded me. So they have a facility. Can you believe this? You may know this already. This was all new to me. A facility for 40,000 people to do meditation at one time. Mind-boggling. I cannot even imagine. But he loves it, and he actually is a teacher in the local area and believes in it. Wonderful. So this is the yoga system, Patanjali's yoga. So I don't know what happens if 40,000 people all chanting together and then moving their thoughts and becoming still. I don't know for how long and what happens later on, what their view is. I don't have no idea. And so this is the yoga system. Then we have the bhakti system of Narada and others, where really you are devoted to one or the other form of Ishvara, some Devata. So even the Rama temple, Krishna temple, Devi temple, all these are bhakti-oriented schools of thought. Okay? So now the question is, to answer Adi Shankara, that everybody else is doing that, what is so peculiar about Vedanta? He says what is different from the others is our specialty is that the Jiva and Ishvara are fundamentally not different. Nobody else says that. Nobody else says that. Nayayikas no, Vaisheshikas no. Sankhya, just by saying that it is Atma and Anatma, but they all also say that, if you see that it is Prakriti, then you could be completely separated from it. So even there, in that case, it is Tvampada oriented. Sankhya also is focused on Tvampada, just me. It does not believe in Ishvara. So it is not based on Tatpada, not the that, but only me. So this is how it is different. This creates a problem, as we can discuss some other time. So this is not a complete solution. So we don't have the Sankhya, and we don't have the same view. Okay, and then you come to the Bhakti schools of thought. There is just the opposite. In Bhakti, as you know, you remove the Tvampada and only think about the Tatpada. You only think about Ishvara or some form of Ishvara and not yourself. That's not us. It's something very unique about Vedanta. And that is that Tvam and Tat, you and that, are fundamentally not different. It's just a way of looking at it. Nothing to be done. So that is really completely different. This is the peculiarity of Advaita Vedanta. Please try to understand this and to articulate it to yourself and to others. And so one one aspect of this also is a very important thing to see. That in Vedanta, there is a statement, Yasmin Vijñāte Sati Sarvam Vijñātam Bhavati. You remember the story from Chandogya Upanishad, where Shvetaketu was sent by his father Uddalaka to study with a teacher. And he studied a lot of things, grammar, mathematics, in fact, languages, possibly yoga, Sankhya, Vaisheshika, all of those things he became very good at. And he became very proud of himself that I know a lot. And as the story goes in the Chandogya, he became so haughty that he did not even touch the feet of his father when he came back, which is traditionally done. Whenever we see some elderly people, we touch their feet to show our humility. But he was so proud of his learning that now I have become a learned man that he didn't do that. And the fathers knew this was a problem. This guy is becoming, and he also understood what he was teaching, what he learned, and so on. They were just a start. So then he said, Shvetaketu, let me ask you a question. Did your teacher teach you that by which knowing which everything is as well known? So Shvetaketu said, can you repeat that? Because I don't understand what you're saying. He says, I'm asking you whether your teacher taught you by knowing which you might as well know everything else. So Shvetaketu said, I thought that's what you said, and I don't understand that at all. No, my teacher never told me that, and he used to tell me everything that he knew. So even he doesn't know, and I don't understand what you mean by it. So this is Asmin Vigyate Sati Sarvam Vigyatam Bhavati. By knowing which everything as well is known. And then Shvetaketu calmed down, and he saw from the tone of his father that I have missed some fundamental aspects of Vedanta. And can you teach me that? So then the teaching starts, and then then the Mahavakya starts. 9 times you had to explain to him, and Tattvamasi, Tattvamasi, Tattvamasi. And so this identity. So here the peculiarity of Vedanta, that's why I made that comment early on, is that if you were to see the identity of yourself with the world, you have to know yourself fully. Because what do you mean by know yourself fully? Because if you only know yourself at the surface, then you cannot see the identity with others. Because no two people are alike, no two forms are alike, no two waveforms are alike. So you will only, as is exactly what happens in our life, we are only focused on differences. So dislike of people, dislike of situations, and so on, all stem from a focus on differences. That means you are really knowing yourself at a surface. And if that is your reality, then let's accept it and go on. It turns out it is not the reality. You know yourself fully. Then you realize that your core is non-different from others. Really, the self of myself is the self of all. And this has to be understood. It has to be understood from how are things made out of. It's like, once you understand, my goodness, you're focused on different ornamentation only, not understanding what they're made out of. And once you understand yourself fully that I'm made out of the gold, then your differences with the other ornaments becomes completely different. You can enjoy the differences knowing that it's all the same. So this is the specialty, if you may, about Advaita Vedanta. So in explaining this, and this is all taken from Adi Shankara, not as though Swami Akhandananda came out with these ideas on his own. If all the sentences after that, Sankhya Adi Darshanena Avisheshat Ishyete cha Sarva Upadanishadam Sarma Aikya Pradipadak. Sarva Upanishadam Sarva Atma Aikyatya Pratipadakatvam. So he says what the Vedanta specializes in is the identity of everyone. Basic identity. On the surface they may be different, but unless you can focus in on your own reality, and that is the reality that is not just peculiar to you, it is really common to everyone in this creation, then you are free. Because yasmin vigyate sati sarvam vigyatam bhavati. So then you have ekatvam between Vishwa and Vaishvanara, Taijasa Girnanigarbha, Pragya Ishvara, Sthula Deha, Sukshma Deha, all become more or less the same. (901). Let me talk about one thing. You know what? Once I do that one thing, I think there's several other things that are being talked about that are very similar to this. So I think we can wrap up the mantra number 3. But let me add some very interesting things about mantra number 3 that was talked about. So allow me a few minutes to go over that. So yeah, okay. So one interesting thing to see as part of seeing the identity between everything in this whole creation, one aspect of doing that is to understand the nature of prarabdha. How do you mean nature of prarabdha? How does that help me in understanding identity? So this is what is being given. So this is explained very well by Swamiji on page 156 for those of you that are following the Hindi book. So on this page, there is a reference given to Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 2.5.1, 2.5.1. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It says, Uktam cha etat madhu brahmane yascha ayam asyam prithivyam tejomayaha amritamayaha purushaha yascha ayam adhyatmam. This is the thing. So let me, instead of explaining the verse, let me explain to you the concept. This section is called Madhu Brahmana. Madhu means honey. So this is called Madhu Brahmana. So section associated with what is called honey. So the reason honey is pointed out is because honey is a very interesting phenomena. And the phenomena is that various bees act separately to add the product of their effort into a single substance called honey. So they all come about. What a beautiful creation. I would just think about that sometimes. How the bees suck the rasa off from the various flowers, then fly over and deposit it at one place, at a single place where all the bees come in. I guess it has to be done in the beehives, so the couple of steps, but it all comes together. And what the result is, what is called karya. Karya means a result of this whole karana is honey, madhu. So the question is, why are you pointing this out? The reason to point out, and this is all done in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Okay? The reason this is done is, in the same manner, the efforts of all jivas culminates in forming the earth. How is that done? I didn't create, I don't remember, I don't see others creating this earth. So what is explained is that the joint efforts and karma of all various jivas have to create a solid object on which they can live. And this is not just part of the Prithvi, that means that even the other aspects of the creation also are done. So now what's the significance of this? The significance is the two types of prarabdha karma. Okay, so listen to this. There are two types of prarabdha karma. One is called vyashti prarabdha karma, or you can just say vyashti prarabdha, and one is samashti prarabdha. One is vyashti prarabdha and what is samashti prarabdha. And here, by the way, before I continue on, I should point out, Swami Akhandanandaji pointed out, that really speaking, all aspect of the creation, including Adhyatma, Adidaiva, Adibhuta, applies to both Vyashti and Samashti. So they are identical in both cases. I just don't see it, that's all. But they are identical. Similarly, here also, Prarabdha is similar between Vyashti and Samashti. So how does that help me? Why are you saying this? So now let's summarize that. What happens is that in the creation, like Prithvi, like the earth, the various other Panchamahabhutas and so on, the Samashti Prarabdha doesn't hurt me. Even though it is there. Why? Because that's the basic infrastructure you have to lead your life with. So the infrastructure doesn't help you. But what hurts you is the Vyashti Prarabdha, not Samashti Prarabdha. Samashti Prarabdha is the prarabdha, excuse me, pardon me. The Samashti Prarabdha is necessary as an overall infrastructure. But it is also a Prarabdha based on the joint needs and efforts of all the jivas throughout the human existence. All existence, not human existence. But the Vyashti Prarabdha creates problems. Because there you say this is mine. And in fact, you know how, we'll stop with that. This body is also Prithvi. Body is also Prithvi. You just lie down and if your prana leaves you and you're lying down, very soon you will see all the animals say, there's some interesting flesh to eat. Then you cannot ward them away. They look upon you as portions of the Prithvi alone. And so your body, your and my body is also part of the Prithvi. But because of the Vyashti Prarabdha, you see, I take this to be mine. And this creates a sense of limitation, which I have to be cognizant of and work on. And so this is the distinction between the creation, which is non-hurting, and my decision to carve out a certain place which becomes me in my mind. So with this, slowly, we will be educated on how to grow out of this sense of body consciousness. So it's not as though I am stupid, but I am stupid. And I need to know how I can remove my stupidity. And so this was also an interesting discussion about, I didn't understand this before, between the difference between Vyashti Prarabdha and Samashti Prarabdha. So that's also part of this discussion of the Prathama Pada. So I think with that, we will now close the books on the Jagrata Avastha, and we'll go now to the Swapna Avastha next time. Okay, so with that, we'll close the class today. Om Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityormaham Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Good to have you all. I don't see any questions, so I will take up a question that was sent by Surendra today. Let me take out my email. So Surendra asks that he has a student who has asked him this question: do animals have souls? If so, how is it determined that at the death of an animal, where its soul will be migrated? For Jiva, that is a person, this question is decided at the death of the Jiva, depending on the karma performed by the Jiva during his or her lifetime and given his karma phala. Animals don't have any agency. They perform actions according to the instincts. Unlike Jiva, who has his dharma defined for him, animals don't have any dharma. So how is it determined if the animal's soul is reborn or liberated? This is the question. Good question. So I think you know the answers to some of it. You know some of the answers. That's what I meant to say. So the word jiva is not limited to human jiva. The word jiva means the one who is endowed with sukshma sharira, subtle body, is called a jiva. So by that definition, all living beings, not only animals, but plants and viruses, bacteria, grains that can become seeds, are jivas. The whole creation is full of jivas. So that part we should understand. Okay? So it's not just so it doesn't mean that only the human beings are jiva. And so what that means is that any jiva must have a soul. Soul here means sukshma sharira, because that is exactly how we define a jiva, is one that has a sukshma sharira, which means it has a soul. This being the case, now we go to the second part. If that is the case, then our next life depends upon the karma phala, the dharma, adharma, all those kinds of things, as his student pointed out correctly. But in the case of the animals, that is not the case. So the answer to that is the animals can be seen, not only animals, but all the other non-human beings can be seen in one of two ways. And any one of them will be okay too. Both will be okay too, but the two aspects should be understood. One aspect is that they are deliberately made not fully functional. And the example of that is someone who is violent is given some medicines to make the person calm down. And if necessary, you even have to tie them down to a bed so that they don't hurt themselves or to anybody else. So this is one aspect of that. So, there's something to be said that, for example, trees cannot move. They're all tied down to one place. So that's one way of looking at it. The other aspect of looking at it is that the other beings are kind of like young human beings. How do we mean by that? If you look at the children at the first stage of their life, they do not have any other than just the desire of eating and surviving. They have not yet come out with any desires that can be evaluated as good or bad. They don't have likes and dislikes. It's a very interesting thing to see. So this is an early stage of beingness. And the second stage of that will be they will develop a personality, and based on their backgrounds, they can either choose to do good or bad and be punished or rewarded for those kinds of things. But in the case of the children, you cannot really get mad at them that, why did you do that? They just did it. So in that sense, the non-human beings can be considered to be in transition. So in the case of non-human beings, unlike the kind of a child, their growth will not occur in this life. Their growth will occur in multiple lives. So those are the two aspects of looking at non-human lives. They also have jiva, they are jivas, they also have souls, and they may be put into autopilot by Ishvara, either deliberately restrained or not given the full freedom for growth yet. Like a child should not be given the full floor because it's still developing. So therefore, net result is that the animals, in the answer to the question by the student, they will also fulfill their destiny by slowly growing up to a point. So in that case, in that sense, they are fulfilling their destiny by doing time. That's what I meant to say. By doing due time for life after that, until their limbs and their mind grow up to a point. This is the analogy of the child. When they are in fact able to function fully, and then they they enter into a human existence, and then they are set free to act or not to act. They are not guided necessarily, and this is where the fun or the problems begin. So that's the way I would answer your student's question, Surendra, and I hope that that is helpful. Okay, so with that, I take your leave until the next class. Hari Om.